Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Susan. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and you are watching Mad Knitting. This is episode 64. Today is Juneteenth, the year 2024, so it's a federal holiday. I have the day off, and I wish a happy Juneteenth to all of you out there. I am ashamed to say that I didn't know anything about Juneteenth until a few years ago. It just wasn't part of my education or upbringing, and I remained ignorant. Now I am less ignorant, and I hope to keep learning more. Today I learned about Opal Lee, the grandmother of Juneteenth. At the age of like 89, she walked all the way from her home in Texas to Washington, D.C. to bring awareness of the holiday and promote it as a national holiday, which President Joe Biden made happen in 2021. So that is really remarkable. Anyway, today I have a few finished things to show you, one work in progress, one huge failure, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about some project planning, which I don't do terribly often. If you're a returning viewer, you may notice that I'm in a much different setup here because it is summer break. My children are home. They're still asleep right now. My husband is working from home, which is unusual, but there's a whole story with that. And I don't want to bother anybody, and I'm a little self-conscious when I'm like recording knitting videos with other people around, but there's never a time when I'm home by myself these days. So I'm in my basement. It's a little messy behind me. I don't know how well you can see. And also, like, the natural light is a little dicey down here, but if I turn on the overhead lights, it's really harsh and there's a lot of glare and shadows and stuff. So I'm doing my best with this today. I've got all my stuff behind me. Behind this couch, which you can't see, is a futon, which we fold out for guests, and also a marimba, because my daughter, who is entering 11th grade this fall, can you believe it? Wanted to bring home some percussion instruments to practice over the summer, and marimbas are quite large. Like, this is probably 5.5, 6 feet from end to end. It's pretty big. It was interesting taking all of it apart and getting it into the back of a Prius, which is the car I normally drive, and then bringing it home and assembling it all again. So anyway, it's been an eventful 3 weeks since I last posted a video. Life happens. One of my son graduated from high school, so there's so much build up to that, and then graduation happens and it's all emotional at the beginning, and then it's kind of boring because you have to listen to them read off 500 names as those young adults walk across the stage and get their diplomas, and there's like a week of parties, and now, like, that's over. Here we are. Also, the night before graduation, my husband had a bike crash. I won't go into details, but we spent Friday night in the ER getting him x-rayed. He has a broken collarbone on the left, and he fractured his radial something near the elbow on his right arm. So that's been challenging for him, and that's why he's working from home this morning, because driving, and he can drive, but it's uncomfortable, and also, like, he can't lift heavy things yet. He's not supposed to lift anything heavier than 5 pounds, so like he can't load up a backpack with all the things he needs for work and lift it up and go to work. So anyway, that is that. Okay, let's get into the knitting stuff. This channel is about my crafting life. Sometimes I talk about other things too. Mostly I'm a knitter. I do occasionally have some sewing or quilting projects. Sometimes I talk about things I'm reading. I'm not going to do that today. Today it's all knitting, all the time. So, finished objects. I thought I would have more today, but if you keep watching, you will see why this is it. So I have 2 finished pairs of socks. I have showed these before. These are pretty simple and straightforward, but I'm very happy to be done with them. So the first pair are these lovely socks. My phone is saying more light required. I hope this isn't a total failure of an episode. Oh my goodness. These socks are for my daughter. I actually started them for someone else, but she really liked them, so they're going to her. The yarn I used, I don't have a label, but it's called Huntington Splash. It's the house yarn from Valley Yarns, or from Webb's, which is their brand is Valley Yarns. And it's either a 75% superwash wool, 25% nylon blend, or an 80-20. I don't remember. But Huntington is like their basic sock yarn, and they have this one line called Splash because there's a solid color base and then they have these streaks of other colors throughout. So I don't remember what this one is called, but it's basically black with some very bright neons, which to me read kind of retro early 90s. I have this much left. It's a fair amount. Enough to incorporate into some other project. I don't know how yet, but for now it'll just go into my leftover bin. To recap briefly, since these are finished, this is the last time I'll talk about them here. I cast on 68 stitches for her foot size. I used size 1 needles. Hold on. Okay. There may be interruptions and family noises and things, but that's okay. So I was saying I cast on 68 stitches with size 1 needles. I did a 2x2 rib for the cuff. Since this is black yarn, this probably isn't going to show up very well. I did plain stockinette for everything. The heel flap is an Eye of Partridge heel, which probably isn't showing up terribly well. But this is how I do the vast majority of my socks. Yeah, I don't think you can see the pattern of slip stitches there. Anyway, I am very happy with how these turned out, and I am ready to give them to her. I actually finished these a week or 2 ago. I don't remember exactly. The last 3 weeks have been sort of a blur. There's just so much going on, and oh gosh, like I'm supposed to go on a work trip next week for 4 days for a conference in Minneapolis, and I still don't know if I can go. Kind of depends on how independent my husband is doing. Like, he still needs help with some things like tying his shoes sometimes and things like that. He's definitely recovering, but I'm not sure if I feel comfortable just leaving. Anyway, so where was I going with that? Yeah, so I finished these a little while ago, but I've been hanging on to them so I could show them on the channel and get a few pictures. And it's not as though it is wool socks weather anyway. So I think she's probably in no huge hurry to get them. The second pair of socks I have finished are these. I've also showed these before, or at least the start of one of them. I've been burning through a lot of sock knitting lately because we've had so many things to go to and sit in the audience for. Final concerts of the season, you know, awards, convocation, graduation, all kinds of things like that. State ultimate Frisbee tournament, all those things. So I've gotten a lot of knitting done, a lot of sock knitting done specifically. These are fun. These are for me, I think. They are, again, basic socks. The yarn I used is Knitpicks Felici fingering weight. The color is Carrot Cake, and I do actually have the label for you. Is it going to scream at me about the light? No, not this time. Got this off of somebody's D-stash because I just wanted to build up my Felici collection a bit. I can't say I'm 100% in love with these colors, but they're just socks, and it's kind of fun to have bright colored socks. What do I say? One thing I did was do a garter stitch heel. For self-striping, I do a short row heel. It's not my absolute favorite heel to wear, but I like how it keeps the stripe pattern a little more consistent, because otherwise when you have a different stitch count around the heel ankle area, sometimes the stripes get really distorted, which I don't particularly like. Short row heel helps address that. Afterthought heel is even better, but I don't like doing afterthought heels. I've done them before, I know how, not my favorite thing. I do like the garter stitch. For one thing, come on, focus, you can do it, you can do it. Okay, I was interrupted again. What I like about the garter stitch heel, there's two things. First of all, you don't have to purl. It's all knitting. And second of all, I just like the texture. I think it looks kind of cool to have those garter bumps on the heel. So that's what I did. For the first sock, I was sitting in the audience of some performance, something I was watching, and I don't know if it's because it was late and I was getting tired, or if it's because it's been a while since I've done a garter stitch heel, but I screwed up about 3 times and I finally just put it in the bag and didn't deal with it until the next day. But whatever it was I had done wrong, I was able to fix the next day without much problem. I don't think I really have anything else to say about these, except that I'm happy with how they turned out. You can see the stripes don't match up, but that's okay. I don't really mind. So those are my only 2 finished projects. I have one work in progress that's very close to done. I thought I might even finish it by the time I sat down to record, but I'm not quite there. I've showed these before. These are socks for my son. This one's inside out because I need to clip the ends. So this is part of a project I've been working on since the beginning of the year, to knit him a pair of socks, approximately 1 pair per month, till he leaves for college this fall, because he will be staying in the upper Midwest where the winters are cold, and I want him to have lots of warm wool socks for his feet. So here is the first completed sock, and here's how far I am on the second. I've got probably 2 or 3 rounds to go, maybe not even that. I might be ready to start the toe. I have stitch markers to help me keep track of where I am. I kept this one in because this is as far as I got. Where were we? I got a lot of knitting done the other day. I am totally blanking on what we were at. Anyway, whatever it was, we were there for a long time and I got all of this done just in one sitting. It was another performance. It was last Saturday night. My daughter was singing in a choir performance with something, and it was like a 2.5-hour concert, and I got all of this done in that concert, but it was great. Anyway, I'm really close to finishing these, and when I talk about my future project plans, I will say more about the final pair of socks that I have planned for him. But like with the last 3 or 4 pairs, what I did with this was use Knitpicks Hawthorne fingering, which is a yarn base that he has really enjoyed wearing on his feet, and it seems to hold up pretty well. I think this is even a color that I have knit socks for him out of before. Grant's Pass is the color. So for these, I cast on 66 stitches. I knit 1 by 1 rib at the top. I kept going with garter rib down the leg and the top of the foot. Slip stitch heel that continues the line of knit stitches, the column of knit stitches. Little bit of a garter ridge, which probably isn't showing up because I just did 2 stitches of garter ridge on either side of the heel, but that makes it really easy to pick up stitches. They're nice and snug and no gaps. And that works out. So like I said, this is at least the 3rd, 4th, maybe 5th, no, not 5th. At least the 3rd or 4th pair I've done with this pattern. It's getting a little old, so I'm planning something different, but I should have these done really, really soon. Okay, my last work in progress is a frog, or it's going to be frogged. I regret to inform you that the garland sweater is a bust. I was so excited about this when I started it. Yeah, this is as far as I got. I got almost done with one sleeve, and TLDR, too long, didn't read. The TLDR version of this is that it's too small and I'm going to pull the whole thing out. Womp, womp, insert sad trombones. I was very disappointed and rather upset with myself for about 5 minutes. This is how it goes when I have to rip out a project, by the way. For about 5 minutes, and then I accepted it and was like, okay, fine. This just isn't working out. I have other things to knit. I will move on with my life. So what happened with this is that it's just too small, and there were warning signs. There were at least 3 times when I should have known that this was not working, that I just ignored and kept going. I mean, I think I even posted on Instagram, like, fit check, it's looking great. No, it really wasn't. So the very first clue should have been when I noticed that the neck was sticking out. You see that? You see how it kind of flares? And this could still be true that the ribbing itself should have been knit on a smaller needle. That is certainly not helping. But when I try it on, especially, and I will insert at some point a picture of me trying this on right before I made the decision to frog that I need to pull it out. When I try it on, especially, the yoke is perhaps a little bit snug, but then that neckline really kind of sticks out. And so instead of accepting that maybe the fit wasn't right, I thought, oh, I just need to redo this neck. I'll go back and do that later. So that was the first flag that I sort of ignored. The second indication was when I got past the sleeve divide and I was partway down the front, and I slipped some of the stitches onto a second needle and tried it on, and I thought, you know, this is maybe a little snugger than I had planned on, but that's okay. Maybe it'll block out. Famous last words, never think something will block out, at least in terms of fit. Not with wool. Wool tends to really hold its shape. Anyway, I thought, you know, okay, so maybe this will be a little more fitted than I anticipated. Sure, no problem. So that was the second flag I ignored. Third thing was that when I started the sleeve, I actually ripped out the sleeve a couple of times and kept redoing it because, so here are my markers that show where I was decreasing. I was following the pattern, which had the decreases happening a little more frequently, you know, fewer rounds in between each decrease. And I wouldn't even like put the whole sweater on. I would just sort of stick my arm through like this and try it on. I thought, oh, that feels a little tight. But instead of taking that as a sign that the whole thing was off, I chose to rip out and just spread out the decreases a little more. I thought maybe I'm just hulking out because like I have giant biceps or something. No, that wasn't the case. So when I finally realized that this whole thing was just off was when I tried it on one final time when I was nearly done with the sleeve because I wanted to check length. I really dislike when sleeves are just slightly too short and right up. I really want them all the way to the end of my wrist. And when I did that, the whole thing just I just thought, this does not fit like I want a wool sweater to fit. This fits like a scuba suit or something, which is not what I was going for. I don't like things particularly oversized, but I also don't want hand knit sweaters to just fit me that tight. So I might have said a few choice swear words for about 2 minutes. I thought maybe there's some way to salvage this. Maybe I can just finish it and have it be a snug sweater and fix the neckline. But after 2 minutes of that, which was basically denial, I decided that no, what I really need to do is just pull this whole thing out and start over. Which is disappointing because this is my second attempt to make a sweater out of this yarn. Several years ago, I started a different one, and I think I was using smaller needles to get a really tight gauge, and I just didn't like the fabric it made. And I want you all to know, by the way, that I gauge swatched with this yarn. So before you start yelling at me to knit a proper swatch, I did it. I used 2 or 3 different needle sizes. I measured before and after washing. I thought I had it in the bag, but what happened is that my swatch lied. It's a lying liar, and it should feel bad. So after that fateful last try on, I went and measured very carefully. I mean, I probably checked with 2 different rulers and counted about 5 different times on the body. So like basically this is a giant swatch. And sure enough, my gauge was like significantly off. The pattern, which is Garland by Stephanie Lutman, and by the way, this is all user error because my gauge did not match the pattern. I think the pattern is very well written and I love this design, and maybe I'll make it someday with a different yarn. The pattern calls for a gauge of 6 stitches per inch, or 24 stitches over 4 inches. When I swatched, that's what I was getting on size 4 needles, which is what I used for the plain body. I always go up 1 needle size for color work. So when I measured this, I was actually getting 6.5 stitches per inch, or 26 stitches over 4 inches. That is a significant difference. That's the difference between a well-fitting sweater with just enough ease to feel comfortable and a way too tight sweater that fits like a scuba suit with a flaring neckline. Not gonna work. So rather than start this whole thing over and knit the same pattern and maybe pick a different size or do some math, what I'm going to do after sufficient time out, because I'm a little tired of all these issues right now, I will just pick a pattern that calls for the gauge that I am getting, because I like the feel of the fabric on this size needle. I don't want to go up a needle size to try to match the gauge. That would be another solution. And there's a lot of patterns out there. So there are a couple that I have found that I'm considering for pullovers with colorwork yoke. One is called Marika, I think, by Along Avec Anna. I will put a picture here and make sure everything is linked. So that calls for the gauge I have, and it's a zillion people have made it, and it's really lovely. Another possibility is called Fernwood, and I'm drawing a blank now on the name of the designer, but one of the things I like about Fernwood is that the colorwork pattern comes down pretty far, so I think I would need a little bit less of the main color, which is good because the amount of yarn I have potentially could be an issue. I have enough for a sweater, I'm just not sure if I have enough of this dark brown without for all that I would need for the main color. I might have to do something contrasting for the cuffs. So, by the way, that was another sign that maybe something wasn't right. Was I think in my last episode I talked about how I was worried about having enough yarn, and I was going to weigh what I had left of the dark brown and divide it evenly to use for the sleeves, which I did, and it appeared that I was going to have more than enough, that I needn't have worried, which is true if I wanted a sweater this size, but if I actually knit something to size, it'll probably take a little more yarn. So anyway, I do want to talk about the yarn before I leave this, because it is so special. This is why I'm so determined to make something work with this yarn, why I am not just going to finish the sweater and give it to somebody smaller than me or burn it or whatever. It's because it is so nice. This is Clara Yarn. I have all the labels here. I'm trying to find all the different colors. This is the third, this is 3.0. It's the third run she had. I don't believe, she doesn't make yarn anymore. I can only find 2 colors. So here's a label. she did this whole like sheep to mill thing where she found small farmers and, you know, follow the whole process of connecting with farmers and then selling or finding a mill to do the fleece, or to, what do you call it? Finding a mill to spin the yarn and then selling it. And it was this whole really cool project. And whenever it was probably 9-10 years ago, she was selling this. I grabbed a bunch because I thought it looked so nice, and it is. It's a CVM Romeldale blend. The two different color labels I have are iron and alabaster. I don't know if you can see. Pretty sure the iron is that dark brown and the alabaster would be the white cream color. And I also got one skein of this tan color that's in the, that I used for part of the color work and for the rib. So it's lovely. And it's because I started a sweater already and ripped it. I know it'll hold up well to frogging. I just have to, maybe three's the charm. Maybe that's what it'll take. So enough of that. I went on and on about that, but that's like a big bummer. I am used to my knitting working out for me. So I guess I need to like step back a little and accept that sometimes it doesn't. And again, about the swatching, I have to say, like, some people hate to swatch and some people are very religious about swatching and take a lot of time to do it. And I'm somewhere in between. I don't always swatch for things. Sometimes I just cast on and hope it works out. And honestly, a lot of times if I don't swatch, it works out. And there have been times when I do swatch because I can just tell from looking at the yarn that it's not obvious what needle size I should use or whatever. And even then, sometimes swatching helps and sometimes it's still a crapshoot. So, you know, I've been knitting for almost 40 years. So since I was a kid, 35 plus years. So I know what I'm doing, and I've just accepted that this isn't a science. Sometimes you cannot predict what's going to happen. Okay. My final topic for today is about project planning, and I don't typically, I have this huge basket full of yarn with future projects, and I'm going to set it in front of me so that I'm not waving my hands in the camera, which I think is kind of annoying. So I don't always talk about future projects because I'm constantly changing my mind, but there is a knit along starting very soon, either tomorrow or Friday. I'm not entirely sure which, that I'm excited about. And I don't usually do make alongs because I change my mind a lot, but the ones I like to participate in are the ones hosted by the Yarniacs podcast. I've talked about them before, but in case you are new here or are unfamiliar with them, the Yarniacs is an audio podcast that's been going for 10 years or longer, hosted by Gail and Charlene. They live in California. They're like knitting besties, and it's utterly delightful. It is just a delightful podcast, and they host a couple of delightful knit-alongs every year. The one that's coming up is called the Colors of Fall Knit-Along. Even though the title is knit-along, it is more inclusive of other fiber arts. If you're crocheting or weaving or spinning, those are all fine for participation. So what I like about this knit-along is that it's a fairly generous time frame. It's extremely flexible in what you choose to do, and the rules are very, very simple. And Gail and Charlene seem to be very lovely people. I've never met them in person, but I've followed their podcast for a while. And the community they have fostered online, and the Ravelry forums especially, is just a really lovely group of people, and I just enjoy participating there. So I'm excited about this knit along. So I will link to their website that has more details, but essentially the Colors of Fall knit along runs from the June solstice, which here is tomorrow, so I think I can cast on tomorrow, June 20, through the fall equinox, which is, I don't know the exact date, but sometime, or sorry, the September equinox, because in the northern hemisphere, that's the fall equinox. If you're in the southern hemisphere, it's the opposite. Anyway, it's around September 20, 21, something like that. So you've got this time frame. You start and end in that time frame in order to qualify. The other two rules or guidelines are that at least one color in your project must be from the Pantone palettes, the color collections that they release in anticipation of Fashion Week. And there are 4 color collections, 2 each for New York and London. There's a fall winter collection and a spring summer collection. So that adds up to 4. And the final thing is that to enter into the knit along for prizes or whatnot, they want a styled photo, whether that is yourself wearing an outfit featuring your finished object, or somebody else that you made it for, or if there's no model because you can't or you don't want to, you can always lay out an outfit, you know, on a bed or on the ground or something. I think one year I made something for one of my nieces and sketched out the rest of the outfit, like on a piece of paper. If you're making an accessory like a pillow or pillow cover or blanket or something, you can always drape it artfully over a piece of furniture. So you see what I mean about flexibility? There's like a lot of possibilities. And it's really fun. So the thing about the color palettes is that when you're looking at those 4 color collections, which I will link in the description box below here so you can peruse them if you'd like, is that there are a lot of colors. For each one of those 4 collections, there are several sort of feature colors, I guess, or statement colors. And then there's also a collection of 4 or 5 neutrals, beiges and whites and browns and grays and things like that. So how many are there in each? Between 50 and 20 per palette. So with all of those, there's something for everybody. And the thing is, the planning of these projects, I think, is just as much fun as actually participating in the knit along. I've come to the conclusion that project planning is sort of a whole separate branch of this hobby. And I think that participating in the discussion threads about it is part of what brought me to this conclusion. So when we talk about our crafting hobbies, for me, this is knitting for the most part. There's the doing of it. There's the actual knitting, you know, that process. And you can talk about whether you're a process knitter or a product knitter. I think that's kind of a silly way of thinking about it because we're all in between. But anyway, there's the actual knitting. There's the acquisition of supplies, which is fraught, right? We have our collections, our stashes, our hoards, however you want to think about it. And sometimes it's really fun to go through what you have and maybe go to fiber festivals and find something really cool or something that's unique. But it can also be a little bit overwhelming if you feel like you have too much and there's so much judgment online about all of that. So that's like a whole different topic that I'm not really going to talk about today. But the third aspect of it is project planning, which I think really is kind of a whole separate thing. Because it's fun to plan a project. Like if you are in the throes of like realizing something isn't going to work out, so you're thinking about what you might do next, or if you're anticipating doing a make along that hasn't quite started yet, there's like a whole discussion thread where people are posting pictures of yarn and links to patterns and asking questions. Which color do you think goes best with this? It's just really fun. And it's a way of building community. And I know that if you are not part of that hobby or not participating online, maybe that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you, or it might feel kind of silly. But I have a feeling if you're a person who's watching this channel and if you've made it this far in this video, you get it. I hope you get it. And if you don't, keep watching and maybe you'll get it by the end. So I have been, over the last couple of weeks, in anticipation of the start of this knit along, been collecting things from my stash, and I even picked up a new thing or two to make plans for this knit along. And this is really, I have this whole big basket full. It's really quite ambitious. Almost all of these projects are for me, so that can always change because, you know, I'm always knitting stuff for other people. I could change my mind. Something might not work out and I just abandon it and start something else. We'll see. But for now, these are the things that I have planned. So I actually I did write down what colors match up with which palettes and stuff. As I go through these, we'll see if it makes sense for me to keep saying them out loud, or if that feels too awkward, I'll make sure that they go on the screen so that if you were interested in checking out the color palettes, you could do that. Maybe you don't care. I don't know. So what to choose? I'll just start with what I have at the top. So one thing that I've been wanting to do for a while is knit another colorwork yoke sweater by Gudrun Johnston. I made the, oh my gosh, I am blanking on what it is called, but I finished this cardigan. It was like light gray. It was my first like steeked project. Oh, I can't remember. I can't remember what it's called. The porty cardigan. That's it. I almost said porta potty. Not it. Yeah, the porty cardigan. And turns out she has all these other colorwork yoke sweaters. There's a pullover version of it. There's like 3 or 4 others, and she had a pattern sale, so I got them all because now that I know that the gauge with this yarn and the fit works for me, like I want to do more of them. So this is what I have. This paler teal, which this is not normally in my wheelhouse, but I kind of accidentally ended up with 3 of these. Will you focus? Maybe not. Anyway, this is Berroco Lanas Light. This has become one of my favorite favorite yarns to do color work with. That's what I knit the porty cardigan out of. This will be my main color because I have 3 of them, and 3 I think will be plenty for the main color based on my experience with the previous sweater. And these will be the contrasts. The pattern is, oh, I printed it out. It's just in black and white, but the pattern is called Little Boosty Yoke. And, you know, you can see that it's a patterned yoke sweater. So I haven't decided exactly which color will go where, but I really like how these go together. I really like the red and the white and the teal together. And this darker one makes for a nice contrast, I think, without being too blaringly different. So the red and the lighter teal and the white all match with colors from the palettes. The dark teal really doesn't, but that's okay because I've got 3 out of the 4. So yeah, so that's one thing I have planned, and I'm very confident that this will work because like I said, I have used this yarn to make a sweater by this designer in this gauge before, so yay. Okay, what do I have next in here? Next, I have 4 colors of DK weight wool that I bought while we were in New Zealand. Again, with the red and the white. How about that? So this is called Woolly Red Hut. This white is from the Naturals because I guess it must be undyed. I got this in a shop in New Zealand. It's New Zealand wool, but I believe it's processed in China. It was quite inexpensive. I kind of wish I had gotten more colors of it because it feels really nice, but I was spending enough money and there's only so much room in your luggage, right? So my thought with this is to make another pair of Happy Mittens by Mayu Kallio. I just made a pair for a friend for a gift that I showed in my last episode. So that's what I'm thinking. All 4 of these colors are in those palettes. The red is Scarlet Smile from the New York Fall Winter collection, as is the white. The white matches White Swan from the same color collection. The sort of light tan matches the mushroom color from the London Spring Summer collection. And this dark bluish brown, I'm trying to see if there's like an actual name. They call it charcoal, but I think it's got a little bit of a blue overtone. Matches Deep Well from the London Spring Summer collection. So I really like how these go together, and that's what I'm probably Happy Mittens, just because those use a lot of colors and I think that would look really nice. All right, next, look, here's a swatch. I know it's a little swatch, but I think it's told me what I need to know. I have this yarn. It's from Juniper Moon Farm and it's called Zooey. It's a cotton linen blend, and the label so helpfully gives this huge gauge range. It says suggested knitting range 20 to 24 stitches over 4 inches. That's like from worsted to sport weight. It's hard to know what's what. Because it's a cotton linen blend, it's 60% cotton, 40% linen. I knew that I was going to have to swatch with this. I have found with plant fibers, I have to use way smaller needles than I would with wool to get the same size. I knit a tank top last summer, 2 years ago, I don't remember. I ended up having to go down to a size 2 needle to get 6 stitches to the inch with this hemp yarn that was supposed to be fingering weight. And it worked out beautifully, but I was surprised that I had to use needles that small. So I've swatched this with size 3 and size 4. I'm getting the gauge that I need with size 3. And I intend to use this to make the Neela top or Neela sweater. I've got plenty. 4 skeins of this. There's 284 yards per skein, so that's a fair amount. But the Neela sweater is by Natasha Hornby, Moonstruck Knits. She has some of the coolest designs. I've bought a few. The way she uses texture and color and shape is just really, really cool. So I'm looking forward to knitting something by her. And even though this yarn is a little bit textured, there's sort of a thick and thin situation going on with it. I think probably the cotton and linen are wrapped around each other rather than blended in the yarn. I still think it'll work. Neela is textured. There's sort of a textured stockinette stitch, and she has cables or something going down 2 of the sides. And you have the option of making it like sleeveless, cap sleeve, or knitting long sleeve. So I'll just see how the yarn holds out for that. Hoping the size works. I think sometimes with plant fibers it will stretch. So if my gauge swatch lies, then I will rip it out and do something different. It won't be the end of the world. All right, we need to move on, don't we? Another sweater. So that's like 2 sweaters for myself. Oh, and that matches, it's sort of a medium gray. It looks like Moonstruck from the New York Fall Winter palette. Is that the same as Natasha Hornby's? Surely not. I'm not sure. Anyway, her handle on Instagram is Moon something. I'll put it on the screen. Okay. Another sweater. Am I really going to knit myself 3 sweaters? I don't know. The advantage to that one is that I could actually wear it in the summer. So maybe I should start with that. Okay. I have this yarn from Knitcircus. I have knit with it before. Not these colors. It is Opulence. It is their MCN base, so it's 80% superwash merino, 10% cashmere, 10% nylon. It is lovely. I think I've said before I would probably never knit socks with it because I'm not sure how well they would hold up, but they would feel divine. I have made a hat, I've made a shawl, and I've made a baby sweater out of Opulence. And I have a fair amount of more of it in my stash. But I have these two colors that I bought ages ago. I don't remember what my intention was at the time, but I changed my mind. I think the designer of the sweater I was thinking of turned out to be really problematic, and I decided I didn't want to support them. But I really love these colors together. So I have 3 skeins, which is, you know, there's over 400 yards per skein. So of this really beautiful sort of bluish green color, which by the way matches Bistro Green from the London Spring Summer palette. And the gray kind of matches Moonstruck, sorta ish. Oh, sorry, I know I'm all over the place. This doesn't, I was looking at the wrong thing on my notes. This doesn't match Moonstruck. This matches Northern Delight from New York Spring Summer. This is what I want to use for that Neela top. Okay, back to the Knitcircus. So I would have this green for the main color and this for a contrast. The problem is, as much as I love Opulence and as much as I love Knitcircus, this is a superwash yarn, and I have discovered that I really do not enjoy knitting color work with superwash, even Opulence. I've done it. I did it for a hat, and it was better than some superwashes, but it's just, it's sort of slippery. The fibers don't cling together like you want them to for color work, and it's just not quite working. So what I have found is a sweater called Color Me Lacy, and I'll put a picture here because I didn't print out the cover picture. There is a little bit of color work in it, but there's a little bit of color work sort of at the top of the yoke and the bottom of the yoke, but there's a lacy part, strip, I don't know exactly how to say it, out of the contrast color, sort of between. And it looks really interesting and engaging to knit, while at the same time not too overwhelming visually. Like, I would wear it, I think. I don't think it would be like too much for me. I tend to go understated a lot of the time. And it also is a proper fingering weight gauge. That's the other thing about fingering weight sweaters. It's hard to find ones that have a tight enough gauge. I hate loose gapey gauges for the most part because I don't think it holds up. I get 7 stitches to the inch when I use a size 3 needle on this yarn, and I like it. That's what I did for a baby sweater that I made, and so I looked long and hard for a pattern that I like, that uses these 2 colors, you know, that's not like color work, and that has the gauge that matches what I like out of this yarn. So that's my plan with that. Are you still with me? I have 3 more. Okay, let's look at this one next. So I want to do some color work mittens, and I have this beautiful Harrisville Shetland yarn in this gorgeous dark purple. It's like, I think the color, my label is ripped, but it's called Blackberry, which is a perfect name for this color. It's a deep, deep purple. It actually matches the color Eggplant from the London Fall Winter collection. But I have 2 skeins of this because the Yarny group, somebody organized a swap at the end of last year. A little goodie swap before the holidays. Maybe one other time I've done that. And I think I talked about that. I didn't talk about what I got in my swap, I don't think, but I talked about what I sent, because I made a pair of mitts and I made a project bag and all this stuff. So my swap partner sent me a lovely package full of wonderful things, including 2 skeins of this Shetland yarn, and it's beautiful, but all I have is this purple, and I think that it's really best suited for color work. It's wool unspun. I'm not sure cables would show up as well as I would like. So I picked up, for contrast, because I don't have anything that really goes with this weight-wise and sort of spin-wise and everything. So I picked up a skein of this lovely Buches petit lambswool. This is my first Buches I've ever bought. It's just called Beige. Here's the label. Picked this up. I was actually on a work trip about a month ago to a different city. As I was leaving, I found a yarn shop. I stopped in. This is the only thing I bought because I was specifically looking for a contrast color to go with this. And I think the yarn shop is closing now because the owner is retiring or ready to move on to the next chapter. Anyway, I think these go very nicely together. And I'm going to knit some kind of colorwork mittens. Probably the geometer, I'm not sure how to say it, pattern. But fingering weight, 2-color mittens, there's like a zillion possibilities, so we'll see. But I can always use more mittens, so these will probably get made. All right, this is gonna be a long episode. 2 more. I have this yarn, which is a sport weight Merino Mohair, 55% Merino, 45% Mohair, 2-ply, local farm, local mill. Is these 2 guys based down Mount Horeb. They have this milled at the Utopia Fiber Mill. You all know Utopia is one of my favorite, like, Wisconsin-based businesses. And this is like, it's Merino and Mohair doesn't make me itch, at least this doesn't. So I want to make a shawl out of it. The pattern I'm looking at is the Eyelet, I think that's how you say it, shawl by Lila Raven or Lila Robb. It calls for a main color, sort of smoother yarn, and then a fluffy yarn. And I want to find something really bright to contrast with this to make that. I'm not a huge shawl person, but that one appeals to me. It's not too frilly or fussy, and I think if I'm using yarn that I really like to touch, I will really enjoy making that shawl. Finally, my last project. The final pair of collegiate socks for my son. Maybe the final pair. We picked out 6 colors of Hawthorne fingering together back in January because the yarn was on sale. So this is the 6th skein. This is the final one. I could always make him more socks down the line, but this is the last of that particular, thing. Shopping trip, or, the last of this sort of line of socks. So it's Hawthorne fingering. It's the color Conifer Kettle. And it's, I think I have fiber in my mouth. It's this lovely dark green, kind of an evergreen. Conifer is a fitting name for it. I forgot to talk about the colors again. Sorry, this also matches the mushroom color from the New York Spring Summer palette. Okay, back to the green yarn. This is going to be socks, and like I said, I'm getting a little weary of the garter rib, so I am devising a pattern. It can't be too elaborate because my son does not wear elaborate things, but I know he likes this green color. My idea, because it's a really nice pine green, is to do a simple motif that sort of looks like a pine tree going down the sides of the socks, down the ankle. So I have sketched something out on a piece of graph paper. I should probably swatch and make sure this works out, but I'm not going to. I have knit enough socks out of Hawthorne yarn, and I think that this pattern is not going to disrupt how snug the sock feels, that I am just going to cast on the number I'm used to casting on, make sure everything is centered the way I want, and just go for it and see how it looks. And if I don't like it, I'll rip it out, but I'm just ready to start and see how that goes. This is how I knit, you know? At some point I just want to cast on and do it. So this matches, the lighter streaks of green match the color Fern from the New York Fall Winter palette, and the darker streaks, or the darker color, if you sort of squint, it sort of looks like Rainforest from London Fall Winter. Although I think that's debatable, because the Rainforest is more of a bluish green than this is. But at least all you need to match is one color. So, okay, this is a really long episode. That's all I have to say. I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you next time.